Okay, good morning. Thanks for those who have braved it to come here in the cold weather, and all those at home. Well done, I suppose. Okay, I don't know whether it's too late to say Happy New Year, but I'm going to say it. I don't know when it's too late, but this will be the last time. So Happy New Year to you all, and all the best for the forthcoming year. Here we are, quoted, switched on. Today's meeting is being filmed for live and subsequent broadcast by the way of the Council's internet site. The images and sound recording may also be used for training purposes within the Council. As you will see from the agenda papers, generally the public seating areas are not filmed. However, by entering the meeting room and using the public seating area, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. Proposed public speakers have been made aware of the broadcasting arrangements prior to this meeting. Would members please use their microphones to contribute to the meeting, and please remember to switch off the microphone when you have finished. Members dialing in remotely, please only turn on your camera when you wish to speak, and please remember to switch it off when you have finished. Also, could you ensure that you refrain from using any mobile devices during the committee, and that any devices are on silent. Thank you. Do we have any apologies, please? Councillor Linton. I don't propose to go through all the minutes of the last meeting, but you have all received them. Has anybody got any matters arising from the minutes? No? Could somebody propose them, please? Councillor Orton, seconded, thank you. Any declarations of interest? No? Okay. We'll start off then with item number 1, 23/0949, and this will be presented by Joanne Davison. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, committee. This is a full application for a new battery energy storage site, and it's reported to committee as is a major application with a site area of approximately 4.5 hectares. The site is located on the now redundant coal-fired power station site at Uskmouth. Existing cooling towers added to the site approximately 25 years ago will be demolished. The site area is hatched blue here, and the cooling towers that I just referred to are these banks, 2 banks along there where my cursor is. The site is located within a predominantly industrial area and will be adjacent to the Uskmouth B retained buildings, northeast of the gas-fired power station under separate ownership, south of the Liberty Steel manufacturing plant, and west of the Welsh Water Waste Treatment Plant. Another battery energy storage facility approved by the Planning Committee last year is located a short distance to the south of the site. The RSPB managed wetlands reserve is located further south, and the River Usk is adjacent to the site to the north. The site is within the urban area and on previously developed land. The Uskmouth Power Station site is an underused industrial location within the urban area with excellent access to the national grid by reason of its previous operation. This lends itself to the type of development now being discussed. Just to point out some of those features I mentioned, so the site is directly under my cursor on the screen now. Retained coal-fired buildings are actually indicated on that aerial shot, CIMIC, Uskmouth Power. To the north, as you probably know, we've got the Liberty Steel plant. The Wetlands Reserve, again, also marked. The gas-fired power station just going off the edge of the screen there. And, of course, the River Usk. So battery energy storage, just briefly, to explain what that is. It removes energy from the existing national grid system during periods of excess supply, stores it, then releases it back to the national grid during periods of excess demand. It helps avoid the peaks and troughs in the supply chain that can arise when there are significant pressures upon the energy system, and it helps iron out issues of intermittent production of electricity from renewable sources by reason of weather and other factors. It provides backup power to the network and encourages grid stability. The batteries themselves, the batteries themselves are akin to advanced rechargeable units, housed within what looks a lot like shipping containers, and include computerized controls and monitoring systems that require little in the way of on-site personnel input. Such storage is seen as part of the change required to advance the use of renewables in energy production and supply. This explains why, in national planning policy, such storage systems are afforded significant support and seen as an important part of managing the transition to a low-carbon economy, with low-carbon energy being seen by Welsh Government as having paramount importance. We are told in national planning guidance that proposals for new storage facilities should be supported wherever possible, and officers consider that this must be given substantial weight. By way of background to this application, the applicants in this case have taken all steps advised by officers in the pre-application phase of the process. They have sought discretionary pre-application advice from the Planning Authority that enabled advanced engagement with relevant internal consultees. They have sought an environmental impact assessment screening opinion from the authority and undertaken the statutory pre-application process with stakeholders within and outside the council required as part of a major application. Consequently, officers have been able to report this item to committee in a timely manner of approximately 2 months from the date of application submission. The key elements of the development of the battery containers. So this is an image of the existing layout. Difficult to see, but where my cursor is now, again, I'm showing you the bank of existing cooling towers that are to be demolished. That's a separate process, not forming part of this submission. This is the proposed layout. The battery containers are the groups of 4 grey rectangular elements to this image. It also includes the inverter and transformer stations and associated electrical equipment. The underground cabling required to connect these elements within the site is also included. That goes to the existing substation, which I'll show you in a moment, which is located on the wider power station site. The application also includes security fencing, landscaping and biodiversity enhancements, groundworks including some land raising, and a temporary construction laydown area and access from the public highway. So the battery units akin to shipping containers shown on this slide. The top element is a section. Sorry, it doesn't show an awful lot. This is quite low-level development, if you imagine rows of shipping containers. The higher element on the left-hand side of the section is the new substation proposed on the site itself. Again, similar plant in the form of inverter and switch room. Again, all very low level, around the 2.6 metre high mark. The fence itself there won't be solid, as this image suggests, but will be a mesh style. The applicant has agreed for all these units to be colour-coded green. That's the control room. Okay. So the main issues as set out in the officer report are seen as impact upon highway safety, most notably associated with the construction period, the visual impact of the proposals, flood risk, biodiversity impacts, fire risks, and of course the benefits associated with energy security, which I've already mentioned. Other matters are referred to as secondary in the report, and I don't intend to discuss those in any detail as part of this presentation, as we cover them in the officer report. I mentioned the substation, which forms part of the wider power station site. It's actually owned by National Grid, so a third party. The cooling towers are at the north of this slide. That's where the battery energy storage containers will be focused. The underground cables then required will come along the existing internal access road. I can get my cursor to work. Here, running down there, and this large or long building here is the existing substation that those underground cables will connect to. For clarity's sake, the former coal stockyard site, which is under my cursor now, is where the Planning Committee have already consented a battery energy storage system last year. Okay, so the main issues then, traffic. The development will utilise the existing access that serves both the coal and gas-fired power stations and the Uskmouth Sailing Club. It's shown on the screen now. Most infrastructure relating to access is existing. The construction period for this particular battery energy storage system is anticipated to last 12 months and will require the importation of material for land raising, along with the containerised units themselves via heavy goods vehicles. One abnormal load is expected over the 12-month period, and track testing has confirmed that this can navigate the highway network. During operation, vehicle come-ins and go-ins will be very limited. As with the Council's consideration of the consented battery energy storage scheme close by, the routing of HGVs will be expected via Meadows Road, leading to Nash Road and West Nash Road. This route already sees movements by HGV traffic and historically saw significant vehicle movements associated with the coal-fired power stations. The presence of HGVs on this highway network, although rural in character, is not new or uncommon. The transport assessment submitted with the application forecasts no more than 18 HGV movements per day, so that's 9 vehicles into site and 9 out. These would operate within daytime weekday hours and half-day on Saturdays. This is comparable to the vehicle movements anticipated with the previously consented battery energy storage scheme, and even combined is significantly less than historically recorded transport movements to the coal-fired station. Notwithstanding this, the applicants note that the other battery energy storage scheme is at a much more advanced stage now, and consequently their construction periods are unlikely to significantly overlap, or at least not for the whole 12-month period. A condition restricting HGV movements is nonetheless justified and recommended, as is a construction environmental management plan, HGV routing and hours of working, having regard to sensitive receptors along the construction access route and biodiversity interests. Dialogue with Highways Networks about any post-construction remedial costs and works to the public highway is a matter for Highways and must be subject to separate agreement. It is not a matter for the Planning Authority. The proposal includes the construction of an access road into the new battery storage system from the existing site access road. You can see it on that slide. Sorry, my cursor's not working, but you can see the access road there, which is going to be created off the existing internal site access. This is very minor in context and acceptable in officer view. During construction, a contractor's compound will be provided, details of which will be required by condition and is easily accommodated within the application site area. And at the moment, it's anticipated the contractor's compound will be in this existing parking area, already hard surfaced on the wider site, and under my cursor. Okay, 4 spaces will be provided for the lifetime of development and for maintenance staff associated with the project. This is acceptable, as is the traffic impact of this development, and the proposal complies with policy GP4 of the LDP in officer opinion. Moving on then to landscape and visual amenity. The site is located in the Caldecott Levels Special Landscape Area. The Gwent Levels landscape of outstanding historic interest lies a short distance to the east of the application site and extends west of the Usk, parallel with the coast. There are international Ramsar and European nature conservation designations, including Special Area of Conservation and a Special Protection Area associated with the intertidal areas at the mouth of the Usk with the Severn Estuary. The Special Area of Conservation also extends up the River Usk immediately to the west of the application site. And the Wales Coastal Path is located to the south, north and east of the application site, some 0.25 kilometres distant at its closest point. The landscape and visual impact assessment submitted with this application confirms there would be no significant effect on this coastal path route due to distance and the intervening built environment and vegetation, and officers agree. You're looking there at an aerial 3D type view of the cooling towers, the two banks of cooling towers that will be demolished, the retained Uskmouth power station buildings there. You can see the River Usk here, the intervening standoff distance between the cooling towers and the River Usk. Not so visible on that aerial photo is the presence of large pylons on and close to the site, which do dominate the landscape in this area. The nearest residential cluster is at Nash Village, which is over 1 kilometre from the site. The views from nearest residential properties would not be altered by the proposed development due to the distance and the height and scale of development. To the south, as mentioned, is the RSPB Reserve, which is also an important recreational and tourism feature. Although the scale of the proposed development in land area does appear large, in the context of the extensive industrial development within the neighbouring area, any change in the overall urban context to the Nash wetlands would be very limited. The battery units are only 2.6 metres high, from a raised ground level of 1 to 1.5 metres high compared to existing. And the highest element, which is the new substation, is only 6.5 metres high compared to the existing cooling towers that you can see on that aerial photo, which are 11 metres high. Set against the much more considerably sized power station buildings, including the 120-metre tall stack, the containers will be compatible with the wider industrial appearance of the site, and the applicant's further proposed landscaping and appropriate finishing colour, as previously mentioned, to the new elements that will benefit the site context. Officers have considered the cumulative impact of the development and recently consented battery storage scheme, and consider the combined landscape and visual effect acceptable and in accordance with policy GP5 of the LDP. In terms of the seascape character and the visual impact, the main aesthetic qualities of the marine area are the open, expansive views across the estuary. Locally, the backdrop to this part of the coast is large-scale industry. The proposed development would not be discernible from the sea to the south. The area has a very high capacity to absorb the proposed form and scale of energy infrastructure development without harm to visual amenity, and overall the significance of effect on the seascape character would be negligible to nil. In terms of ecology, the applicant has provided a lot of support and information. Sorry, there's some photos of the site as existing there. I should have showed you. So they're the cooling towers. You can just see the retained Uskmouth building, the brick building in the background on that one. So there's the 11-metre high cooling towers and the general context looking at the retained Uskmouth coal-fired power station and their considerable size. Okay, regarding ecology, the applicant, as I say, has provided a lot of support and information with the application, and pursuant to advice given in the pre-application stage, and this is welcomed. It includes a shadow habitats regulation assessment that officers consider best adopted by the Council as the necessary assessment for the purpose of the Council's duties under the habitats regulations. This is required by reason of the potential for impact by development on protected sites, including the River Usk and the Severn Estuary. The appropriate assessment associated with the HABS regs assessment is included in the officer report, and subject to mitigation set out and associated conditions, officers are satisfied that the integrity of the protected sites will not be adversely affected by the proposed scheme. NRW and the Council's ecologist support this view. Ecological enhancement and mitigation is proposed, and support and information is detailed, setting out ongoing habitat management. Officers have included conditions to control development in accordance with the support and information received and agreed. As the site stands off the River Usk itself, with existing bankside vegetation and green space to be retained, free of development, impact upon migratory fish species in the Usk is considered a factor not important to our considerations, as impact is unlikely to be significant. So what you're seeing on that slide there is the battery energy storage, and also a significant area retained for green space and biodiversity enhancement and drainage, on-site drainage, surface water attenuation. New trees are being planted. As I say, all bankside vegetation and that area of green space between the battery energy storage and the River Usk is all being retained as existing. Moving on to flood risk, officers have considered the development as highly vulnerable. The site is located within a flood risk area. The main source of flood risk appears to be tidal. An FCA flood consequence assessment has been submitted. The current ground level of the site for the battery compound area is around 8.5 metres AOD, rising to just over 9 metres AOD in the centre. Now, sea defences in the area are identified as in poor condition, so they exist but they're poor, and therefore flood levels for an undefended scenario have been used to inform development design and mitigation measures. This modelling tells us, or flood modelling tells us, that the area for battery storage will flood up to 9.75 metres above ordnance datum during the 1 in 200 flood event, marginally higher than this in the area identified on that plan for drainage and biodiversity enhancement works. In the extreme 1 in 1,000 year event, the site will flood to about 10.43 metres above ordnance datum, approximately 1.5 to 2 metres higher than the existing levels. The flood consequence assessment states that the ground will be raised to a minimum level of 9.7 metres above ordnance datum, which would ensure the development site is above the 200-year, with climate change allowance, 2100-year flood level. This allows for a lifetime of development in excess of 75 years, albeit that the lifetime of this project is anticipated to be 40 years. This land raising will be supplemented by pads or similar pillars, pads, that will further elevate the containers to minimise their risk of flooding in the extreme scenario. I'll carry on. I don't know what's happened to my presentation, sorry. Officers are satisfied that flood risk can be managed, and Natural Resources Wales raises no objections subject to specified conditions that officers have included. Fire risk, we've covered this in the report. This is considered relevant as battery fires can have major implications. This proposal is of large scale and will be close to another consented battery energy storage project. An outlined battery safety management plan has been submitted with this application and sets out design recommendations that should be complied with, along with the requirement for a final version of the document once design is complete. This is recommended to be conditioned. We know that fire risks are mitigated by each container, including fire detection and gas fire suppression systems that are fully automated, along with ongoing monitoring of temperatures, for example, as may detect faults or early fire detection. Site layout and fire breaks are also potential means of limiting the impact battery fires, and officers are satisfied that fire risks can be managed. Other regulatory authorities may also have input into this aspect, including, for example, the Health and Safety Executive and Fire Service. So to conclude, the proposed developments will secure significant investment in this underused urban industrial site. Battery energy storage has national planning policy support and is encouraged in principle. It contributes to an efficient energy supply network and facilitates energy supply resilience and security. It supports the use of renewable energy sources as part of the supply. This site has many attributes that lend it to this type of development, and the vital grid connection to make it viable is secured. The application is accompanied by extensive supporting documents that inform the assessment of material planning considerations, and no objections to the scheme have been received from technical consultees. Officers consider the scheme acceptable and recommend that it be granted, subject to the stated conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Joe. We do have a public speaker support on this. Richard Moore, you have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, councillors. I'm Richard. I'm one of the planners at ENSO Energy. Our sole focus at ENSO is to increase the amount and use of renewable and low-carbon energy in the UK to tackle climate change. It is obvious that we need to produce more renewable energy and increase the amount of energy storage capacity. In November last year, National Grid announced they are accelerating the connection of up to 20 gigawatts of clean energy projects across the UK, the equivalent of 6 Hinkley Point C nuclear power stations. 10 gigawatts of that is dedicated to battery storage projects. We know that Welsh Government strongly supports the principle of developing renewable and low-carbon energy from all technologies and at all scales to meet Wales's future energy needs. Indeed, the growth of energy generation from renewable sources requires the management of the resultant intermittency in supply, and energy storage can help balance supply and demand. Proposals for new storage facilities should be supported wherever possible. This is the exact wording found in Section 5 of Planning Policy Wales. The British Energy Security Strategy sets out the need for more UK-based renewable energy, a power supply that's made in Britain for Britain, a power supply that is immune to the whims of the international price-fixing oil cartel OPEC and not influenced by conflicts abroad. Electricity demand in the UK is set to increase by around 50% to 2035 as surface transport and domestic heating are electrified, and industry is increasingly powered by electricity or hydrogen, which will be produced using electricity. Your officers recommend that you grant permission for this application. No objections have been raised by any of the technical consultees advising your officers, subject to the recommended conditions which are agreed. On reading the report, you will see that the project will secure significant investment in an underused urban industrial brownfield site. The development of low-carbon energy storage development has national planning policy support and is encouraged in principle, and it contributes to an efficient energy supply network. It is essential that projects like this are consented now to increase the rate at which carbon emissions can be cut. The rapid decarbonisation of the electricity system is essential if Wales and the UK as a whole is to meet its carbon reduction commitments. All communities have a responsibility to increase the supply and use of renewable energy. Battery storage is the mortar in the net zero wall. The solar, wind, hydro and nuclear bricks that form the wall topple without this mortar holding it all together. I sincerely request you uphold your officer's recommendation and approve this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So we now open the floor to questions to the committee. Councillor Owls.
Excuse me. Thanks, Joanne. Just one question, really. You said in your submissions in the assessment later on in the report that the traffic would be sort of 18 vehicles a day or 9 there and back. But earlier in the report, in the air quality bit, it sort of alludes to 76 HG movements a day during construction. I don't know what the difference is, if you could explain.
Okay, the 18 HGV vehicles are taken from the transport assessment submitted as support and information to the application. That's HGV, not vehicles in total. There will be other smaller vehicles, vans and staff private vehicles, obviously, in a day. But it's the HGV movements we were particularly interested in. And the transport assessment, bearing in mind this is actually a smaller scheme to the one Planning Committee granted last year. And on that other scheme, they had a similar transport outcome that they anticipated 18 HGVs per day, 9 in, 9 out. So the outcome of this transport assessment is entirely compatible and consistent with that one. That's why we've recommended a condition. It does accord with their own transport assessment, but we think it's prudent to ensure that we have control over the comings and goings of HGVs specifically. Lesser vehicles we're less concerned about. Without going through my report again, I'm not quite sure which section you mean, but
it's
certainly...
Page 29 on the report, it just says the RPS transport assessment has been read and it would appear that up to 76 HGV movements per day could take place. I don't know if that's a mistake or not.
Are you referring to the scientific officer's representations, or have you got a paragraph in the assessment that I
It's
can
in
look at?
the air quality bit of the internal council advice. Just before the recommendation, and there's a bit of a map on the Newport air quality management areas.
No, I can see that. Sorry. Yeah, that's the scientific officer's comments, but they're not consistent with what the transport assessment says. I should say as well that the conditions that you're seeing on your assessment, which include that 18 HGV vehicles per day, they have been seen by the applicant. They know that that condition is recommended, and they've raised no concerns about that.
Thanks.
Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry for flicking my camera on there. When you said Councillor Howells, I thought you actually said my name, so apologies for that. Thanks for the presentation, Joe. Just a couple of quick comments, really. I mean, generally, I think in terms of renewable energy projects like this, I think it's really important that we do support this type of project, in the current climate. I have noticed some of the objections from the National Community Council. But again, I've got to say, it mentions about the effect on ecology, the tranquility of the village. But as you've already mentioned, I think the distance of the project from the village and the conditions that have been applied, they do actually address those concerns, I think. And there is quite a comprehensive list of conditions that have been applied, which, when you look through them, I think they are all feasible for the developer. They're all reasonable. The advantages and the benefits of this sort of project, I think, vastly override any sort of concerns that have been raised. And I think those concerns have been addressed anyway. The level of investment, the jobs, and the climate, the effect, the advantages for the climate in terms of this sort of renewable project is really important. So at the moment, unless something comes up in this discussion that sort of changes my mind, I mean, I really am in favour of this. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions? Sorry? Is it? Councillor Cox, do you want to come in? Somebody said they've seen your hand go up, or...
I'd echo some of the comments that have just been made by Councillor Reynolds. I mean, clearly it's the sort of project that I think we should be supporting, because as part of the move towards a zero carbon economy, and I have no problem with that. I mean, I assume that if the existing power station wasn't there, that we would be resisting these kind of developments on this particular location, because it clearly is a really very, very sensitive area in terms of its ecology and historical value and so forth. And so my question really, again, it sort of follows on from the comment that's just been made, is that there are a whole range of conditions, and there's a whole range of issues have been investigated as part of the application in terms of the ecology and pollution and the impact on wildlife, etc., etc., etc. Assumptions about the routing of traffic and the impact on local communities. And what I'd be interested in is the extent, putting that in down in the plan and the approval is one thing. Of course, it happening is what's important, and it just seems a massive amount of the requirement in terms of the planning staff, in terms of monitoring that's all happening, just seems enormously demanding. And I'd just be interested in and the planning officer's comment on the role that monitoring is going to play, and how easy it is that's going to be to put into effect.
Drew.
Thanks, Chair. I think I mentioned at the start a little bit of background in terms of the pre-application work undertaken by ourselves as officers and the applicant. It's been a very engaging process, and a lot of the conditions you see on your agenda actually stem from information provided to us by the applicant. They're not, we're not imposing requirements on them that we have necessarily come up with. They're based upon information they have provided to us in terms of telling us what they will do, and then we will obviously say or put a condition requiring them to do it. Some of the conditions have been recommended by Natural Resources Wales. You're absolutely right. The monitoring of conditions is a resource that we need to consider. It's something we do. We're doing it on the other consented scheme as well, close by. But we have an ongoing relationship, obviously, with Esmouth Power Station, and applications in process and developments in process there. So I think that relationship we've built up is beneficial because the applicants are engaging with us in terms of allowing us on site. They're very cooperative, which is always it always makes our jobs a lot easier. But I'm not concerned with the monitoring on this one. It is something. It is a resource. Anything with a lot of conditions is something we'll need to keep an eye on. But as I say, the applicants are very cooperative on it, and I don't have any undue concerns regarding it.
Okay, thank you. To answer your question,
Thank
Councillor
you.
Cox. Okay, thank you. Any other further questions? No. So we'd like. So do we have a proposal, please, for the recommendation granted with conditions? Second, Councillor, thank you. All those in favour? Do you want to put your cameras on, or you are the voting thing here is now for you? Okay, that seems to be carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, sir, thank you. Would you like if you could, there's other speakers for the next who want to come forward now? Thank you, sir. Okay, thank you. The next application, number 2, is 23/0387, and this will be presented by Geraint Roberts.
Right, thank you, Chair. Good morning, committee. This is a little bit of a collector's item in the sense that it's a conditional discharge application which you may never have seen before. Just to give a little bit of background, obviously we've just spoken about the conditional regime with the application that you've just approved. What we did is applied a condition to a development for highways infrastructure on the Cott Hill development site, which is the area that you can see on the slide in front of you. So if you have a look at the cursor, this is Ringland, the SDR road is here. Sorry, there's a bit of a delay on the way it presents on the screen, so I'll move the cursor very slowly. And then this is Cott Hill. Now, for those of you who are familiar with it, it's a lane that you access off the SDR. It rises up over the hill, as you might expect from the name. It crosses over the top of the hill and then drops down into Llanwen village. Now, for those of you who are familiar with it, it is a rural lane, effectively. It is has no footway, it has no street lighting, it's got variable gradient, it has bends in it, and reflecting the limitations of it, it comes one way when you enter the village, so you drop down the hill, and then you may turn left into Langston Lane here, or right towards Station Road, and down towards the golf course, if any of you are familiar with that. On the corner is the public house, and then you would go again around the one-way system, back up the hill, then it becomes two-way again, and then back to the SDR road. That road, Cott Hill, has always been, as I've said, a rural highway and extremely limited in its function. Perfectly fine when it was serving Llanwen village and the rural hinterland beyond it, but inadequate for the development that was proposed on Cott Hill, which was for up to 1,100 houses. So from the very earliest iteration of that scheme, there was always an intention, in effect, to replace Cott Hill with what we call the Spine Road. There is a terrible lag on this. In any event, the Spine Road would be this. So if you follow the cursor, it would go through the southern part of the development site and then drop down the hill into the village, and it would join Station Road close to the junction with Bishton Lane, which is this lane here on the slide. Okay, so when we talk about a Spine Road, that is what we are talking about. The Spine Road would be designed to modern highway standards, and it would be suitable to take through traffic, which would pass through that southern part of the estate, accessing the historic village and accessing the areas beyond it. Okay, so the intention was that Cott Hill would be replaced by an improved road, one with footways, one with street lighting, one with appropriate gradient, one with relevant visibility. In effect, a better road to accommodate the significantly increased levels of traffic that we would expect to see in this area following the completion of the development. When the application for the road infrastructure that you can see on this slide came in, the Council applied a condition which would seek the closure of the historic Cott Hill Lane to effectively prevent rat running through on an inadequate road and to allow for the better integration of the northern and southern parts of the development site. It was always inherent within the scheme that the north-south road, which is where the cursor is moving now, would take priority over any east-west traffic, so that was always understood. Okay, so there was always a strategic effort to achieve an improvement in the highway network within the vicinity of the development site, and the condition was quite simply to achieve that. Cott Hill would be closed to rat running, improving the amenity of the residents who lived upon it, and the northern and southern parts of the development site would be better integrated. Okay, the condition therefore agreed in principle to the closure of the lane over Cott Hill and in its effective replacement with the Spine Road. Now, you'll see from the report that was written, the delivery of the Spine Road was so important to the Council, we actually included it as part of a legal agreement. Okay, so we reproduced that section of the legal agreement just for your, just to inform you, i.e. the necessity of it and the importance of it was inherent from the very start of the development scheme and its earliest iterations. Okay, so that is the background, just so you can understand that point. Okay, moving on then. This is an aerial photograph of the current situation. Okay, now this is painful. Right, now Cot Hill, you can see running through the slide, basically top left to bottom right, okay? And the new road, which will link the southern and northern parts of the development site, basically runs through here. Now again, any of you who are familiar with it will know that that's currently a haul road. Okay? It isn't correctly laid out, hasn't been properly installed. They have banksmen on it and traffic is moving through. But what you will note from that photograph, those white blotches, sort of top centre of the photograph, they are the insulation on the floors of the houses which are currently being built. So this was back last summer. In effect, then, the northern part of the site is now being developed, and therefore the developer is anxious to formalise that road crossing. Okay, the Spine Road, or at least a section of it, is visible here, down to this roundabout. Okay, and then you would travel south and off the slide to access Station Road. Okay, and you can see from that aerial photograph that the Spine Road is generally a modern, wider, better road with improved geometry. Okay, now the point of difficulty that we've arrived at is, in effect, to do with where the Spine Road joins Station Road, and you will have seen from the representations that we have received that people are concerned that that junction does not function very well. And the principal concern is that larger vehicles, HGVs in effect, find it difficult to negotiate that junction. From the report, you will have picked up that that junction does have reserved matters approval from the council. The highway section didn't object to that application when we had it. And additionally, the Spy Road is constructed. It's in place, although it is subject to occasional closure when other works are being completed in that southern part of the development site. Okay, so the junction that people are concerned about has planning approval. It's already had that, it's had it for some years, and there's no reason to think that it hasn't been constructed in accordance with the details that we approved. So from the planning side of the deal, that junction's agreed, and we cannot revisit it. There's nothing within the planning system that allows us to come back to that. Okay, so the focus of this application is purely and simply upon the details of the closure, because that is what the condition requests. Okay? It says, give us details of how you will close Cot Hill. So moving onward then, how that might be achieved is in the following way. Now these slides effectively just support some of the things that I've been telling you about the integration of the northern and southern sites, so I won't dwell on those too long. This is the proposed closure. So again, that redefinition of the north-south linkage over the east-west linkage. So you can see in the centre of the slide, the new road is here. Okay, it would consist of footways and a standard modern geometry. Now, Cot Hill is the road running from top left to bottom right in that slide, and the plan is to close it with bollards. So it isn't a complete closure. The road will remain permeable to foot traffic, horse traffic, bicycle traffic. So it's not a complete closure, it's a partial closure. Again, at the southeast end of it, further bollards to close it off, but not completely. And then to prevent vehicles turning left or right into it from the north-south link, further bollards. So that's basically how it's going to be achieved. Bollards, and then with a surface consisting of pavia blocks. Okay, so it is a relatively straightforward mechanism to secure the closure, and highways have no technical objection to those details. Now, the other point, which is of some importance, is what happens if people drive into Cot Hill inadvertently, come to the closure. What do they do then? Well, there's already a turning head in place here, which was constructed as part of the new development. Again, if you're familiar with the road, you will know about that. So from the northwest side, there is a turning area, and what the developer has proposed is that there will be a further turning area, basically where the cursor is now, roughly opposite the small development of large houses, which you can see sort of centre right of the slide. So if anyone enters the closure, they can reasonably turn. and there will be signage proposed as well at either end of the closure, which will indicate it's ahead, and therefore people can reasonably anticipate what's going to happen and not basically enter the cul-de-sac, which is effectively what Cot Hill will become, at least for vehicles. The other thing to bear in mind is that all of these things are happening in the public highway. Okay, the closure is, or partial closure is, of the public highway, so planning is not the only stream of control that is in effect here. There will also need to be a traffic regulation order, which is administered by the council as a highways authority. Okay, so there is a level of duplication of responsibilities here. And that process itself requires public consultation and can be subject to objection by anyone who might have concerns about a proposed partial closure of a road. Okay? But we are advised legally that as a planning authority, our concern is very narrow. We have a condition. It requires details of how the road will be closed. Those details have been provided, and you will note that the highway section agrees in terms of the details of the closure, they are acceptable. Okay, the highways officer's concern actually relates to a wider consideration in regard to performance of the Station Road, Spine Road junction. Okay, but as I pointed out, from a planning point of view, that is a done deal. We've already agreed it. It has been provided as agreed. However, again, because it's a junction with our highway, Station Road, it is subject to control under the highways regulations. And again, as we understand it, under the highways regulations, again, the highway section has technically agreed to the details of that junction, although as I understand it, it hasn't been formally adopted yet. Okay, so in effect, what planning officers are advising you is that the performance of the Station Road, Spine Road junction is a side issue which is subject to control by the highway authority. Okay, so our concern is narrowly with the details of a closure of the lane, Cot Hill, and that those details are acceptable, and that the highway section have confirmed that these details are acceptable. Okay, so it is a very narrow context for our consideration in planning terms, and that the other issues which are arising are in effect matters for the council as a highway authority. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We do have some public speakers on this. The first one will be, excuse me, I did write it down, will be somebody objecting. Oliver Davis, please.
Can you just check about the Labour
Oh, sorry, yes, yes. Before we go any further, there were some late representation papers come out last night. Can I confirm everybody has seen them, please? Yeah? Yeah, okay. Oliver, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the councillors for hearing me today. Where do we start on this one? It's been going on a long time, been pretty stressful. I'm here on behalf of the Ponderosa Equestrian Centre, which is my mum and dad's business. 35 years it's taken to build this business, 23 of which have been at Lamwern with our fantastic staff, and not forgetting the horses and ponies. I've got 5 minutes here now to ask you not to close us. The reason we're objecting to the application is quite simply because the alternative road to Cot Hill is not suitable and not safe for large HGVs. Everyone, apart from Redrow, I believe agrees with this position. Highways agree, we agree. You know, the issue is pretty clear. The junction is not fit for purpose. The council didn't consult when they built the junction, but now that's all sort of being swept aside. Tough. One of the main issues that the highways officer said is that there could actually be a chance of a horse box overturning coming around this junction. That's if it fits in the first place. Now, we're being told, oh, it's not relevant, you know, it's got nothing to do with the closure of Cot Hill. Let me tell you something. If a horse box, these aren't cars and trailers, these are 26-ton HGVs. If a 26-ton HGV comes down that hill with children, a team of children, and their ponies on board, and turns over, as highways have said is the case, then that, my goodness me, that will be relevant. And I want it on the record today that a national housing developer is fully aware of this issue, and not only are they aware of it, they're pushing for it, and it is somewhat endorsed by the planning department, because basically we've dropped the ball and we don't know what to do now. By the by, this doesn't just affect our business. In the village, you've got the pub, you've got the village hall, you've got a children's home, you've got the golf course, you've got a school about to be built, you've got agricultural businesses further afield, and we know that the village is getting far, far busier. We know there's 3,500 houses proposed for the local development plan, so this junction is going to be the main connection for pretty much everything. And, you know, I don't think it's unreasonable in the scope of a £400 million development, £400 million development in Lamworn Village, which is needed to supply quality housing. I don't think that it is unreasonable to ask for a junction to be changed, simply made safe, before we shut the main tested and proven thoroughfare into Lamworn Village, which we've been using for 23 years for our equestrian centre. And I would ask this committee, please refuse this application. Redrow, come forward, change the junction. Not only will we support you and get this road closed, get those houses built as fast as we can, but we will thank you as a business. Please do the right thing for the community. Don't close Cot Hill until that junction is made safe. And I suppose that's all I can say, really, is my destiny goes back to, or our destiny goes back to the councillors. So thank you for hearing me today.
Thank you very much. The second speaker will be Zoe Aubrey, please.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Zoe Aubrey and I'm Senior Planning Manager with Redrow Homes, South Wales, and I'm responsible for the submission before you today for determination. The submission is to discharge a planning condition which was placed on a reserve matters application for infrastructure at Great Milton Park in 2018 by the local planning authority at the request of the Highway Department. It is therefore Redrow's obligation to satisfy the condition, which requires the closure of Cot Hill subject to the approval of technical details. The decision to be made today is whether the technical details submitted are acceptable to allow the condition to be discharged. Critically, the decision for the committee is not to decide whether Cot Hill should or should not be closed. Additionally, the decision is not about wider highway matters such as junction detailed designs elsewhere at Great Milton Park. Redrow welcomed the LPA's recommendation to approve the application to discharge the condition and the technical details to close Cot Hill. In this regard, the committee report makes clear at paragraph 712 what is before you for determination today and what is not. I emphasise that the Highway Authority have no technical objection to the closure of Cot Hill. The committee report helpfully confirms, as such, without a technical objection to the details to closure from highways, the details provided are acceptable to discharge the condition. This does not mean that other issues are not capable of being material considerations, but officers conclude compliance with a condition with no technical objection to be submitted from the highway section must carry significant weight. As such, officers conclude that the condition should be discharged, notwithstanding concerns over the operation of the Spine Road, Station Road junction. Furthermore, at paragraph 7.16, the committee report also confirms that council opinion has been sought by the LPA before making their recommendations for approval. Clearly, the committee have heard a number of accusations towards Redrow today. In this regard, we have sought to engage with the local community. We had proposed an alternative scheme that saw the partial closure of Cot Hill, but this was objected to by the Community Council and the Ponderosa business and the planning officers. So we reverted to the scheme before you today that is fully compliant with the planning obligation placed on Redrow by the planning authority at Newport Council at the request of the Highway Authority. The committee report is clear that the grounds of the objection from the Community Council, the late representation received yesterday, and that of the Highways Authority are beyond the scope of the matter before you for determination today. In conclusion, the Highway Authority has confirmed that there are no technical objections to the matter before you to determination, the closure of Cot Hill, and I respectfully request that members approve the application in accordance with the officer's recommendation. Thank you for listening to me today.
Thank you, Zoe. The ward member would like to speak now. Councillor Calloway.
Thank you very much. It must be 2024. I'm a little bit disappointed, obviously, with the recommendation, but I think we sort of all need to make fairly clear that the residents in Llanwern wholeheartedly, pretty much, agree with what the officers are recommending. What they're not happy about is a genuine safety concern, Chair. There will be an accident if we don't do something about that junction, that Spine Road junction, before we close Cot Hill. That's all they're asking for. We've seen Newport fined £2 million before Christmas because of a health and safety breach. Now, look, I'm not going to go any further than that down that road. But let's be careful where the responsibility lies. They're telling me that the decision to close Cot Hill is sensible, but not before the issues around the only other access is addressed, or at least set some sort of condition to enforce the developer to address the Station Road junction before closing Cot Hill. And it's really important to understand why we need some sort of cast-iron guarantee from the authority Redrow that the Spine Road junction is to be addressed before we close Cot Hill. We've been let down a little bit with respect to Redrow on some of the promises that we've been made in these so-called community engagements prior. To ensure the safety of all road users is paramount in your consideration as a committee, and that the small community-based businesses are protected, such as the Ponderosa, has been said by Mr Davis, the local pubs, and the Community Institute, which is very close to that junction. I would like to point out that the experts, the highways experts in relation to the Spine Road junction, have not just raised concerns, they're on record as stating that the only exit onto Station Road that will be left is not fit for purpose and therefore should be refused or amended. Residents are not asking for refusal, simply a watertight condition. I'm a little bit uncomfortable in asking planning to approve an application that states the only access to Station Road is simply unsafe. That's what you're being asked to approve, in effect. And the risks, the health and safety of all road users. And it's a little bit ironic. 12 months ago, when the developer had temporarily had to close Cot Hill for roadworks, they had to widen the Station Road junction, that very Spine Road now that we're doing nothing about, they had to widen it. Now that speaks volumes to me. It's simply not fit for purpose, and we have a duty to protect the health and safety of everybody that uses it. And what strikes me as a little bit odd is, let's say, a developer closing all the access routes to, say, Tesco's in Spitty, bar one unsuitable access, one unsuitable route that only a microcar could access. We all know that application would be refused. We all know it. The developer, and let's be honest, the anxiousness to formalise it is simply profit orientated. Let's be honest about it. And I've got no issues with that. The developer stands to make that profit from the development, but continues to ride roughshod over some of the residents of Llanwern. As simple as that. From commencing phases without proper permissions, failure to maintain hedgerows, failure to provide proper traffic control, and worst of all, the ongoing action of discharging water into inappropriate waterways. So that's why we're after this gas tie-in, somehow condition to say, look, before we accept officers' recommendations fully. But before we do that, let's make that access safe. Yeah, let's protect local businesses, local community businesses. Let's just do that. Thank you for listening to my comments, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Calloway. Now, I know there's going to be questions on this because it took me to get my head around this quite a while. And all those who got Councillor Reynolds, your hand is up first.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've got to be honest, when I was reading through this report, I was feeling very uncomfortable, and I'm even more uncomfortable after listening to what's been said this morning. This really, it raises an issue that I've brought up in the past, where the constraints that we have as a planning committee, they do constrain us quite a lot. And I think this is a perfect example where I think we're almost going to be forced to approve this because of what the planning regulations say and the issues that we have to consider and the issues that we're not allowed to consider. But I'm very, very uncomfortable with some of the health and safety issues that arise from this. I was uncomfortable when I read the report. I'm even more uncomfortable now after listening to what's been said. What I'm wondering is, even if the regulations mean that we have to approve this because we can only consider certain issues, can we as a planning committee make representations either to the Highways Authority or to another relevant body to say that, yes, we've approved it, but we still feel that these changes need to be made to make that road fit for purpose? I mean, Lamworm Village is tragically all too aware of what can happen. You know, Councillor Callaway has already just made reference to that. I don't want to be sitting here in 12 months' time thinking I was part of approving something that has led to an accident. But I feel that with the regulations we've got, that is in effect what we're going to have to do this morning. So I'll ask the question again: are we able to make representations to Highways or to another body so we can voice our concerns, even if technically we approve this? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Reynolds. I'm going to carry on with questions a sec, but I'd just like to point out we do have somebody here online from Highways, so we can ask the questions, and then if the Highways would like to come in, once all the questions are asked. Okay? Okay, Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Chair. Just like you say, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with this application as well. I know the area well. I used to be my old paper round as a young lad, so I'm from that area. Yeah, it has. But it seems to be like technical is used quite often. We're being bulldozed into a decision, as I said, to vote for all this. But knowing and listening to the arguments, I think from a health and safety point of view, and I think really speaking fit for purpose, I don't think we can just close it off. We can't discount the fact that maybe once we decide to close Cot Hill, that we're just moving issues away to this junction. I know it's down to Highways. I know we can speak to Highways now as well. But knowing the junction, perhaps if we've seen it ourselves, we can appreciate it a little bit more. But being a HGV driver, I share the concerns as well. Buses, HGV Class 2s, Class 1s, whatever goes through that area, because it is deliveries down to the golf course on Class 2s as well as the horse place as well. So I think, really speaking, my concern is I'm not happy in the safety aspect of this junction. So I don't want to be seen that we just passed the one on the application of Cot Hill, because it does have a major impact on the junction. So if we close that off, it just focuses well back onto the highways. I know it's the best way to say it is health and safety. I can't see me committing to it. I'm not happy. And if there's an accident further down the line, it's on our heads. We must stand together and make sure that we vote on this correctly, because I don't want to be bulldozed on the technical term. And if I hear the term technical by Redrow or planning again, it must be going into double digits. So there must be a reason why you keep saying technically it's going to be approved. Technically, it just seems like we're being bulldozed down a dead-end route, I'm afraid. Excuse the pun, because Cot Hill's going to be a dead end. Thank you.
Councillor Mockford.
Yeah, I agree with my colleagues. A couple of very basic questions. So at this point in time, who owns that junction? Okay, can somebody very quickly tell me who owns the junction?
My understanding is it's not adopted, which means it's not us. It remains in effect under the control of a developer.
Right, that's what I thought. So at this point, you made the point about the planning can't get in. The planning's been approved for that junction. Now, if we go down the line and it gets adopted, this junction is owned by the council, yeah? Rhetoric question, obviously it is.
Well, obviously I'm not a highways officer, but that would be my understanding. I think probably we now need to be speaking to Mr. Hardiman from Highways. So, Andrew, if you can comment, please.
The basic question is who owns the highways?
Morning, councillors. Sorry to interrupt you there. Basically, on the grounds that I see this at the moment in time, we have an agreed plan that was signed before I started. That's not a pass the buck. I'm just saying that's the circumstances. I am saying that the actual plan that we've got has been objected to verbally and in writing, etc., etc. And my feeling is the only control that we have on it is to ask for an RSA 2 and 3, which is a road safety audit, which will pick up the issues that we've got. Now, we would not adopt that until all those issues raised by an RSA 2 and 3 are addressed. So that's our method of control in this instance.
No.
I can stop at that if you want to fire away.
Okay, well, that's put something into the domain. So this RSA, you're saying you cannot adopt this junction unless it is deemed safe by today's standards. If there's an accident, as some people are predicting down the line, once this has been adopted and the RSA has been passed and people have put their neck on the chopping board and said it's safe, if there's an accident or a series of accidents, then it would seem natural to me that there would have to be changes made there. This has happened before. We've seen accident hotspots where you have to make changes to junctions, roads, etc. So, but that point is too late. So we've got to wise up now. So if there's going to be a safety assessment, that's great. And if that's part of the condition of adopting, that's great. When's that going to happen? And is that going to help us be satisfied that this junction will be safe? And if necessary, it will be amended and changed. And that cost will be borne, presumably, by the developers at this stage because it's not adopted.
Okay. Hopefully people are taking your question, written down, and we'll come back to this and we'll have an all overview at the end, okay?
So I guess okay, yes, thanks.
Yeah. Councillor Owls?
Thanks, Chair. Just two questions for Andrew to come back on when he does. Is there a Section 38 agreement and a Section 278 agreement? So if Andrew could come back on those two. And in all honesty, in all good consciousness, I cannot support an application like this where there are safety grounds, which our own officers are saying on a road safety audit. And I cannot accept the sort of advice that road safety considerations are not a material planning consideration and not relevant to this. So, to my mind, I can't support this application, and I would be proposing that we refuse the application.
Okay. Councillor Cox?
I mean, I basically share the concerns that have already been expressed. I obviously won't repeat all those, but I think we're all quite clear what the reluctance is actually to vote for this recommendation. Now, I understand that the planning law is pushing us in terms of the direction of approving this, because clearly, and again, it's a factor I've clearly got in my mind, because as a locally elected councillor, I've got a responsibility for custody of the council's money, and if the legal advice is that actually refusing this could get the council in a situation where it may find that it's got considerable costs because it's actually not followed the technicalities of planning regulations. I understand that point, but the whole point is, I mean, presumably the whole purpose of having a planning committee and having people like me on it and the other councillors who are not actually qualified planners is to bring a bit of common sense to situations and bring an outside view. And it clearly seems to me anybody with any common sense looking at this situation where on the one hand, we've been told legally we're pushed into the direction of making one decision, but on the other hand, that's not only going to be flying in the face of another council department, but is also going to be potentially setting up a situation which isn't safe. I'm not. If that is the situation we're in, I think there's an obligation on us really to think about this a bit more carefully. I mean, one thing I don't understand, just looking at this from a common sense point of view, is surely if there's goodwill on all parties in terms of the council, in terms of the developer, the local community, I honestly don't see why this can't be taken away and some kind of resolution found with all the parties concerned. I mean, the developer is somebody who's got a very big stake in this area. It clearly is, it is a company that has got a social conscience, and with goodwill, I honestly cannot see why this can't be resolved. I mean, is for example, it possible for this decision, this issue to be taken away, and for there to be a discussion with the developer that actually sees these issues through, the closure of Cot Lane and the junction on Station Road? Is there not a possibility that if this is taken away, that some timetable can be agreed between all the parties concerned, which gets things in the correct order? In other words, the junction at Station Road is actually made safe before Cot Hill is closed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howells.
Thanks, Chair. I don't normally come back in twice, but just a point on the developer, really. If we were to refuse this application, presumably the developer could issue an appeal against that. I'm guessing that's the process. If the planning committee said, yeah, thanks for nodding. I mean, it would be, a pretty hard-faced developer in this situation to say we're prioritising money over safety, wouldn't it? And I hope that the press are watching this, and if they do appeal against the decision, if we are able to refuse it today, that the press picks up on the fact that they're prioritising the profit of letting their new houses or selling their new houses over the safety of the local people in Lamworm Village, and that to me is really key. We also know from this developer, they don't look after their roads, they don't bring them up to standard to meet Section 38 agreements. We've still got the Monbank development, still not adopted 5, 6, 7, 8 years after it was handed over. Major concerns from residents about that, and I have a real issue with that, and I would welcome the press to paste that everywhere about them. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Reynolds, want to come back in?
Thank you, Chair. It's sort of following on really from Councillor Howell's previous comments and also Councillor Cox. Because they both talked about our conscience, I suppose, really, for want of a better word. We've all raised similar issues. I just want to ask a direct question, really, a legal question, if I can get some advice on this. If we, as a planning committee, if we do refuse this, that would seem to go against the planning guidance that we're supposed to follow. So therefore, presumably, an appeal would follow. Could I just ask for legal advice on this? Struggling to sort of find the right words with this, really, but if we were to refuse this, how likely would it be for an appeal to fail, and how liable would we be as a planning committee for those costs?
Okay. Andrew?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, members. Now, as Garrett started with his presentation... Sorry, Councillor Mogford.
Okay, carry on.
Sorry. This is an unusual one that we've brought to you today. But there are certain things we've got to remember. Firstly, you as members are sitting as planning committee, representing the local planning authority. We're making a planning decision here. We often, as a council, make different decisions in different arenas, highways, planning, licensing, to name but a few. It is unusual, and we've had council advice on it. That's not something we do lightly, because we need to be able to advise you as members the best we can to make that decision. Now, very simply, the principle of closing Cot Hill has already been agreed years ago, 2018, in the previous decision. So before us today, the applicant, in this case Redrow, has to submit a scheme of those details. It's the technical details. Are the closure, the bollarding off and the provision of a turning head acceptable in highway safety terms? The highway safety, our highways authority have advised us that it is. So from a planning perspective, those details are acceptable. Now, the Highways Authority have also raised concerns with regards to the Station Road junction, a junction that has received planning approval, has received technical approval under the highways legislation. We have sought council advice that says that that is not a material consideration to the determination of the technical details of the closure of Cot Hill. Now, that advice, as I'm sure you're aware, if you've ever spoken to anyone in the legal profession, is caveated slightly. And it says if it is a material consideration, it should be given very limited weight. So we've been advised that, in all likelihood, a decision to refuse the technical details based on concerns over safety on the Station Road junction would be unlawful. Now, in terms of the recourse for Redrow, if members refuse the application today, there's two things they could do, and or both. They could look to appeal the decision to PEDU. That is within their right. They could apply for costs that the council have been unreasonable, and we might have to, as I said, my view and my professional opinion is we are entering the territory of unreasonable behaviour. This is why we've had council advice to advise you as members on it. The other recourse is Redrow could seek to challenge that decision, that members have taken a decision that's beyond their remit and considered things they shouldn't have. Again, potential there for us having to defend such a situation. What we've said in the report is true. From a planning perspective, the details are technically acceptable. That's not the end of the line there for Redrow. They've still got to go through another process in terms of getting a traffic regulation order through highways legislation. Separate decision to the one before members of planning committee today. So I'm not sure whether I have answered all the questions that have been raised, but as I said, Station Road has got planning approval and highways approval. But we are being told that that is not material to this decision. And if it is material, if that advice is wrong, it should be given very limited weight in the determination of this application for the details of the closure of Cot Hill. The principle's already been agreed. Nothing we can do about that. So are the details before members acceptable in highway safety terms? The highways officers have advised they are. Thank you, Chair. Don't know whether there's anything you want to add, Joanne.
It's not computing for me. So you're saying that the highways have said that it's safe, yet they still have to do this road safety assessment? Am I missing something? Is it just a cursory view that they think it's safe?
No. There's two issues here. Andrew Hardiman, as I said, Andrew, if you want to come back in after I've spoken, by all means, please do. Andrew was referring to undertaking a road safety audit, stages 2 and 3, before adoption of the Station Road junction. That's not for consideration today.
So you're saying that if the 2 and 3 have to be done, stage 1 has been done. Can I assume that?
That's my understanding of the Station Road junction. That's not before us today. That's not what we're considering. We're considering the Cot Hill closure that would require a traffic regulation order and have to go through a separate technical process under highways legislation, to which members of the public residents could comment on.
So are we saying that as a planning committee we're not concerned with how safe that junction is?
That's not before us today. That, as I said, what we're advising you and what the legal advice is transport severance and that safety of that junction is separate to what is before committee today.
Then
I'm sorry, as members, you can obviously make representations to the local highways authority with regards to concerns about that process.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to ask the highways to come back in. Andrew, would you like to come back in and add anything further? Andrew, you still there?
You're on mute.
Apologies there, I missed that last part. Could you just repeat the question, please?
Andrew, basically, the members are asking the safety side. It is complicated. It took me to get my head around this a while. Is as a committee, we're being asked to approve what is in front of us, the closure of Cot Hill. What the committee are concerned about is the junction on Station Road. When will this come into effect, and will it come into effect until all avenues have been looked at for the safety of this junction? Is that correct, committee? Yeah.
Okay. Basically, at this moment, obviously, they've been explained that we've had KC advice on this. From my side of it, I can't object to what Redrow have put forward in terms of shutting Cot Hill. I can only raise the issue that I'm not happy with Station Road. Station Road, as we stipulated, has still got a drainage issue. There's alignment issues. There have been observations of near-miss accidents. Obviously, the bend is too tight, and the gradient was, I think the gradient was initially overlooked on plan, and when these things can become obviously promoted once things are built on site, that you can be overseen, and I do believe that's what's happened in this instance. Now, I am obviously torn. I'm in a position where that this is out of terms of what this application is at the moment. But I'm not comfortable as a highways officer. I've put it in record that I don't believe that the Station Road is fit for purpose, and I've explained that throughout the whole process to the stage that we're at now. The control that I have, I believe that a highway authority have on this, is the fact that there is required to be an RS2 or 3 done on this site when you have due concern, which we obviously have. So my control on this for the Highways Authority, I believe that we need to have further discussion with Redrow to identify how we move forward with this, because for me and everybody else, it's a showstopper. But in this instance, I don't believe that I can object to the actual shutting up of Cot Hill. My only control of the actual access is my RSA and everything else. Is that clear? Okay, thank you. I know people members have got questions, but I want to bring one in first and ask to Andrew O'Gearan. Is the approval in front of us is for the closure of Cot Hill? Yes?
Yeah.
So, sorry, can I just carry on? Is we won't approve to or how do I put this? The committee approve the closure of Cot Hill, but not until all recommendations from the highways are taken into account, and so Cot Hill will not close until everything is in place for a safe junction on Station Road.
So before us today is condition 3. Now, condition 3 is set out in the officer report. The principle's already agreed, so that of the closure of Cot Hill. The issues being raised about safety of the Station Road junction are separate, completely independent of this decision, and this is why we have been advised as such. Highways have control over that under their legislation. The condition requires, once these details have been agreed, if they're agreed, to be implemented within a certain time frame. Now, we as an authority could say, understandably, that we would not look to enforce subject to those details being agreed elsewhere. But that's not for members being decided today. We're looking at whether the technical details before us for the closure are acceptable or not.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Just one additional point on that is that if you were to agree these details today, that does not mean Redrow can forthwith go and close a road. They still need a traffic regulations order under the highways legislation to close Cart Hill. So this would not be the last, bite of the meal. There is still recourse through the highways legislation. And my understanding of the legal advice that we had is that was part of the consideration that the KC made. They said because this is subject to other controls, which can take a wider consideration, then it becomes not an issue for us. That's why our focus is narrow rather than broad.
Okay. So you want to come in?
No, just really to confirm what Garen said, traffic would need to be prohibited from going up there with a legal order, and also because the work would be being done in the highway, then Andrew might correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they would need an agreement with the council as well before they could do any work in the highway. So this isn't, as Garen has said, it's not a go-ahead. It's just part of the process.
There are others before you, Councillor Mock, but Councillor Reynolds, you want to come back in again?
Yeah, thank you, Chairs. I think the question I was about to ask is more or less been answered by Andrew Ferguson, but I'll just clarify just in case. The first time I spoke on this, I asked the question that if we do approve this because the planning constraints that we work under means that we have to, can we still make representations to the to the Highways Authority? Can we make those representations from us to say, yes, we've approved it, but it's under duress, for want of a better word, and we want to make sure that those safety precautions are put in place. So we've said a yes, but it's a conditional yes. Can we make those representations? Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think my camera's come on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can't see you though. That's a bonus, that is, right?
Thank you very much, Mark. I was just wondering, as we can refuse this, can we put a stall on it? Can we delay it until this is resolved between Redrow and the residents?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jones, you want to come back in?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I get a sense of fear that we can't fail to approve this application, and in the position I am, I'm just questioning whether Redrow are listening to everything that's going on today, because I just don't think, as a company, you're listening to the residents, the committee, any feelings, any sense that's going on today. I think if you are a good company and you listen to the people, I think, really speaking, you will go away and come back with adjustment to the planning for this highways junction with Station Road. Yes, we may pass this planning today, but I fear we need the company in hand to come back to us and even be good willing and say we have listened and we are going to make an amendment down the road. I know they can't say it now, but let's just hope and pray that somebody's listening to what's going on in this room today, because somebody somewhere must listen, because nobody's happy on fit for purpose health and safety on this junction. You say it's a secondary, it's not the application, it's secondary, but it's directly linked to the closure of Cot Hill. So once we've done that, we're further down the stage. And then even highways are telling us hesitantly, they're not happy. How foolish are we to go down here and vote for something that we all know is wrong? Even the company, Red Row, must listen to everybody here and come back and do something about it. It will not look good on you if you go ahead and don't do anything, because as soon as there's blood on the road, I will be coming for you, because I am not happy with this.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Mogford?
Thank you, Chair. I don't like to be told which way I've got to vote, and I'm forced to vote one way or another. I think I've got the freedom to vote either way. In this case, I'm happy to support the recommendation, but I would like somewhere something recorded that I think, if I can talk on behalf of the committee, that we're not happy with the safety issue. Okay. I think we need to absolve ourselves of that responsibility as a planning committee.
Yeah, I think that's come across loud and clear.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. So I want to come back in. Councillor Cox, is yours an old hand, or do you want to come back in?
No, I think basically what I'd like an answer to is the issue that Councillor Harvey's raised, that if this is no decision is taken today, and that the officers go away and discuss with the developer and other parties involved a way through this, are we obliged actually to approve this today? Is it not possible to delay this until some of these issues have clarified and hopefully resolved? Because presumably, I don't know if there's an actual time limit we're working to that's laid down in the planning regulations, or whether we're pushing this, whether we are discussing this today because the developer is putting pressure on the council to get it resolved. I'm not sure. So basically, can we, as Councillor Harvey said, can we put this off until there's further discussion? And if we do that, are we putting the council at any risk in terms of legal action and any costs?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Howells?
Thanks, Chair. I guess Red Row could agree to an extension of time for the planning authority to not make a decision today, couldn't they? And the officers here, so she could liaise with the planners and grant us an extension of time while these issues are considered. But as a side note, could the highways officer just confirm the process around the highway closing application? So if we agree to close the highway today, the Red Row then have to make an application to the highways authority to effect that closure? And what is the process of that? And what is the powers and decision making? So is it a formality, or can the highways just say, no, we're not going to close it because we have safety concerns elsewhere? That's what a bit I'm not sure of. Because if the highways officer can do that, that changes the way that we probably think about our decision, I guess.
Yeah. Andrew, do you want to come back on that one?
Well, with regards to the highways process, I will leave that to Andrew Hardiman. But in terms of delaying the details of this application, what we're considering is whether the details are acceptable. Red Row have put it to us. They're asking for a decision. We've consulted on them. We've got no objection from the Highways Authority. So as a planning committee, those details from a planning perspective are considered acceptable. So there'd be no reason to request a delay. There'd be no obligation on Red Row to provide us with an extension of time. There are separate issues, clearly. We're all aware of that. We're aware of that as a planning authority. The Highways Authority are aware of it, that are being looked at and considered separately. So we could get into the realms of a non-determination appeal, which again could result in costs potentially. What we're saying is the detail is acceptable and there's no reason not to make a planning decision on those details. There's still separate processes that have to be followed, just with this one regard in terms of the traffic regulation order. And maybe Andrew Hardiman might want to come back in and advise members further on that process, because I'm not.
Sorry, Joe. Okay, Joe. Sorry, Andrew, do you want to go first and then legal come in then?
Yeah, okay. The process for me would be that this is additional Section 111 works over and above, as we see at the moment, of what we already had, because there is an increase in the area that's affected on Cot Hill. So there would be a need for a new Section 111. That's the first process for us at Highways, along with, that would run at the same time as that, is the TTRO or the TRO, which basically is, as I believe at the moment, I think it's 2 to 3 months of consultation on it, and full review. And that's obviously full public consultation. So that process is obviously a long drawn out one. I do like to try and, we obviously can't go back to Redrow for any answers here, but we have worked well to certain aspects with Redrow. I have been somewhat bemused by the fact that they went back to the old layout for the junction because there was an improvement there. Though it wasn't ideal, it was certainly a lot better than what we've currently got. We are in conversations with Redrow in terms of the drainage issues and this, but this has obviously been on the back boiler till today has been decided. I do obviously state that we will be interacting with Redrow and continue on that grounds. So hopefully that answers a few questions there.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
Just to clarify on the traffic order, the procedure is that an advertisement goes into the newspaper. There's an objection period for the public for at least 21 days. Then a report would be compiled and it would go to the cabinet member for a decision. So there's plenty of opportunity for objection in that process.
Okay, thank you. I just want to, in the agenda, we're talking about the closure of Cot Hill. I understand that. But nowhere in the agenda is any pictures of the junction which we are talking about. Because I drove down there myself personally last week to have a look. And I take it it's the junction which is down past the pub which is blocked off at the moment. Is that the one? Yeah? Okay, thanks. Thanks for the nod. That's all I wanted to know. Okay. So, sorry? Councillor Ewells?
I'm not sure all of us benefit from your knowledge of the area. Perhaps I could suggest we have a site visit, Chair?
This is the problem, is we're not here, we're here, and I've just clarified this is what I was going to come on to, is that we're here as a committee to approve what has already been agreed to, okay? Because this is a discharge, right? Okay, so we approve this, and then I think then we have to understand that once this is approved, that Cot Hill is not going to be closed until all processes have gone through, and our highways, I'm sure, with the consultation of the residents and Redrow, are happy with that junction being approved to a safe standard. So are we all aware of that? This is where I had to get my head around when I had my pre-meeting, okay? And it did take me a while, one sec. And it did take me a while. So we are approving what is in front of us. We are not approving Cot Hill to be closed until the junction on Station Road is adhered safe. Do you understand that? Councillor Mogford. Okay. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry to be quick. I think that clarification there is what we need. I think that will set us on the right road.
And that is where we are now, I'm going to move it on, we are now going to move on to the recommendation of approval, but we all understand that there are processes to be followed before Cot Hill is closed, okay? Okay, all those in favour, please? Sorry. Do we have a proposer for that, please? Do we have a seconder? Seconder. All those in favour of the recommendation to approve this planning, what is in front of us. All those in favour, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Those against? So, and abstentions. 2 abstentions. So that has been passed. Okay? Thank you. I knew that would be a complicated one. Thank you very much. Thank you for the speakers, and personally I wish you all the best.
Chair, could we take a 2-minute break?
I want to walk it there and get my feet warmed up.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll have a 2-minute comfort break. Thanks. Okay, we're alive again now. Thank you. Thank you for your patience in the last item. We now go on to item number 3, which is application number 23/0858, and this will be presented by Joanne Davison.
Thank you. This application seeks full planning permission for the change of use of part of the ground floor and the entirety of the first floor from retail to residential use. It's 153 Killian Road and it's hatched in blue on that slide. The application is reported to committee following a request from Councillor James Clark so that highway matters can be considered and discussed. Aerial photograph there. This unit is slap bang in the middle of the terrace of Killian Road, the commercial centre. The existing unit is currently vacant. However, its last use was retail on the ground floor with ancillary kitchen, bathroom and storage space on the first floor. There's a picture of it top left in its current condition. The property does appear to be in quite poor condition at the moment, so its reuse is welcomed in principle. The top right photograph there is taken from the rear elevation, just looking out at the back garden area, which is quite overgrown. And that bottom right is just one of the rooms on the upstairs that is going to be forming part of the 3-bed flat. The existing retail unit on the ground floor is to be retained, which is important because this is part of the district centre. It's going to be made marginally smaller to accommodate a new separate entrance to the proposed flat. So this is the existing arrangement. On the left-hand side is the existing ground floor with the retail unit and ancillary spaces at the rear. And then upstairs, just rooms associated with the downstairs retail unit, not a flat. The proposed layout here, ground floor on the left, so you can see what I mean about the ground floor retail floor space being reduced to accommodate that separate access leading to the stairwell for the bedrooms to the flat. But the flat will be over 2 floors, so this back end at ground floor will also form part of the flat. The rear part of the ground floor, which currently comprises a kitchen, shower room and store, would be converted into a kitchen or dining area, utility room, shower room and bin storage area to serve the flat. The first floor would also be converted into 3 bedrooms, a study and a bathroom. The proposed flat would have sole access to the garden and the amenity area to the rear of the building. And the only external changes proposed include the addition of 1 door to the existing shop front window. No changes are proposed to the side and rear elevation apart from, the blocking up of the little window you can see on the right there where my cursor is, and the creation of a door where that window is now under my cursor. As I mentioned, the building is within the Cullion Road District Centre. It's mid-terrace, currently contributing nothing to the vitality and the viability of the district centre. Whilst the proposal does not guarantee a retail use at ground floor, it could encourage residential occupancy of part of the site at least, whilst retaining the prominent commercial floor space at ground floor. Many of the nearby units appear to already have residential accommodation at upper floors. Members should also be aware that the General Permitted Development Order 1995, as amended, which is the Permitted Development Order, permits the change of use of the first floor of a retail unit to up to 2 flats. In practice, this means that planning permission is not required from the planning authority as it is granted by the order itself. Now, this is a fallback position here, and officers have considered it as such. This is not permitted development because it is comprising or including part of the ground floor in the change of use. However, the unit would benefit from permitted development to convert the upper floor to residential. The Council's adopted SPG on flat conversions confirms that a 3-bedroom flat should have a minimum internal floor space of 74 square metres, and the proposals meet this requirement. In terms of amenity space, the rear garden, bear with me a sec. The rear garden area would be available for the use of the occupants of the flat for the drying of clothes and the storage of bicycles. It's of generous size with level access, and all of the proposed rooms have been inspected by the case officer and would have access to natural light and ventilation. The proposals also include the provision of a dedicated bin store. Let's go back to this one. Okay, on the left-hand side, right at the top there, you can see a bin store. It would have a dedicated bin store for the commercial area, which is here, and then the bin store at the top there for the flat. Bins appear to be retained on the pavement to the front of the property at the moment. Whilst bins would need to be carried through the property for collection, as the proposed bin stores are at the rear, in the case of the residential unit where such arrangements are often considered problematic, officers have afforded weight to the fallback position already mentioned, along with the benefits associated with encouraging the future use of the building. The key point in this case appears to be parking and concerns for highway safety. That's why it's come to Planning Committee. The Highways Officer has objected to the proposal on the grounds of parking. The existing A1 use would require 1 commercial space and 1 space per 60 square metres of floor space, resulting in a total of 2 spaces based on a total floor area of around 120 square metres over the 2 floors. So that's 3 spaces in total for the existing. The proposed mixed retail and residential use requires a total of 5 spaces, 3 for the 3-bed flat and 1 for the retail at ground floor with the additional commercial space, and thereby resulting in a shortfall of 2 spaces in total against the existing situation. The site does not benefit from any on-site parking provision, and notwithstanding this, the property is located within a highly sustainable location. And when a sustainability assessment is undertaken in accordance with the SPG, the site scores well enough to justify a reduction in parking expectations to the flat to a minimum of 1 space. So on this basis, the parking demand of the proposed development is exactly the same as the existing use. The proposed development is therefore acceptable in terms of parking provision, as it's no worse than the existing situation and arguably better than any fallback scheme, remember up to 2 flats at first floor, that may be possible at the site. There are no parking restrictions, as you can see there, along this section of Cullion Road, and the proposal will provide dedicated cycle parking. On this street view image, the one that is subject to the application is the one with the for sale or to let board on the fascia there. Finally, a contribution is required to affordable housing in accordance with adopted policy and based upon the creation of an additional residential unit. The applicant has agreed to the heads of terms, and officers therefore recommend permission be granted, subject to the stated conditions in a legal agreement. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions by the committee? Councillor Owls?
Is there no living room in the property? It's just 3 bedrooms. Is that right? It has all the hallmarks of being a HMO to me, but not a HMO application.
Okay. My cursor is not doing very well. So kitchen, dining and utility and bin store at ground floor. Upstairs then, bedroom, yeah, study, play and another bedroom. They're the labels they've used. Whether they actually mean this ground floor here, kitchen, dining, living, I don't know. But I take your point. There's no actual annotation of a living room, which we would often, or a lounge or something that we would expect to see.
I just wonder whether you then class it as a 2-bed flat, really. Right? I don't know if there needs to be a living room or not in a building. Because the play and study is on the hall stairs and landing, isn't it? So it's not a separate room as such.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's a consideration, really. It just seemed a bit strange.
Yeah, not concerned about it. I mean, the room sizes are quite generous. I think we had, bear with me a sec, I had a photo. Yeah, so this photo, as I said, it's not in the best condition at the moment, I'll be honest. We have actually got photos of all the rooms because we've inspected all of them. This is the one at the front to Cullion Road. I would have ordinarily expected this to, it looks like it has in the past been used as a living room, but they're absolutely clear this has not been living accommodation previously or not to our knowledge. But they've got it down as a bedroom, and a really generous bedroom at that. So not concerned. They're just annotations on a plan at the end of the day. But the size of the rooms, the outlook, the natural light is all actually of a good standard, and the garden size is of a good standard. So actually a lot better than some of the things that we see.
Yeah, no, grateful for that. The lack of living room just makes me wonder whether it might be a HMO, so that's the sort of risk. Is that so? The licensing authority will have to keep an eye on that, I guess, in terms of the license of the HMO.
It's not what they've applied for.
Yeah, no, I get that, but
to us,
yeah. Practically. The second point is the objection from the neighbour around the garden access. Is that irrelevant? Can we discount that, or?
Yeah, I think so. This was an odd one, and it took me a while to figure this one out. I think on an early iteration of the layout plan, it's not on here, the applicant, for some odd reason, in the garden had shown an access from number 151 at the very rear end of the garden. It was of no consequence to their submission, and I don't know why it was on there. Whether it was some sort of error, whether there's some sort of historical gate there, I don't know. But we've confirmed to them, and they've confirmed back to us, there is no access.
Councillor Jones.
I'm not like you. Thank you, Chair. Just a quick observation, really, with the street parking. This building will have some construction work, obviously with the staircase and such. Is there consideration with the workmen's vans being parked there and carrying materials like plasterboard and timber across? Because there's a busy footpath along there with the shops. Is anybody just thought of that? Are they going to have any restrictions on them for health and safety for the pathway and public?
I wouldn't wouldn't say that's an issue for us. I mean, it's quite common. There's unrestricted parking along the front. It's quite common for there to be works going on of some form or fashion here and elsewhere. So as far as planning is concerned, not a concern for us, in my opinion.
Councillor Mogford.
Thank you, Chair. So you've dismissed the objection from the, with regards to the parking. As Councillor Jones said, that's a very busy area there, and it's a lot of shops, and it's a very successful shopping area from what I can see. Can you just reinforce why you think that the parking considerations can be reconsidered, or you've reconsidered them, or considered them?
Okay.
He's called.
Not dismissed, because we have considered them, but there's two things. We've considered the sustainability of the site, the sustainability test that the adopted SPG allows for the reduction of parking, and we've also then, as a secondary matter, considered the potential fallback position, just as a throw-in second matter in our minds. But the primary issue is it's highly sustainable. It scores 10 points when we do a sustainability test in accordance with the adopted SPG. And what that means is if you have a residential unit that would ordinarily require 3 spaces, we can actually reduce that to 1 because the location is highly sustainable. And what that means is the upper floor of the retail unit would currently generate 1 parking space in accordance with the SPG. With the flat, it also generates 1 space in accordance with the SPG. The ground floor doesn't really change. So the combined total of the existing use against the SPG parking requirements and the combined total of the proposed use against the SPG requirements, having regard to the sustainability factors, are exactly the same. There's no increase in parking demand in accordance with our adopted SPG. And then we say, and also, just if you're not entirely comfortable with that, the upstairs of this unit has permitted development rights to be converted to 2 flats. What that means is, if they wanted to convert it to 2 flats, they probably wouldn't need to apply to us at all, and we wouldn't have these considerations before us at all. So that's just something that we call the fallback, that should also carry a degree of weight in our considerations.
Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Chair. This is going to be really quick because while I've been waiting, the 2 questions I was going to ask have just been answered. I wanted to ask about the changes to the parking due to the SPG sustainability study and the fallback position, but Joe, you just explained that brilliantly, so thanks very much. And I was also going to ask about the rear access that the 151 had raised in their objections. The only other comment I got really is just about the fact that obviously the building is vacant at the moment, and you know, one of the things the council gets criticised for quite regularly is the number of vacant buildings, and you know, the need to bring vacant buildings back into use. I think most people would support that, so I think it's, it is important. But yeah, thanks for answering those questions, Joe. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? So we'll move on to the proposal of granted with conditions. Can anybody propose, please? Second. All those in favour? Okay, that's passed unanimously. Thank you. So we're going to go on to item number 4, application E230294, and this will be presented by Neil, please. Neil Gunther.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just get the presentation up.
Apologies for the delay there. I'm pretty cold, as I think everyone is. Right. This building probably doesn't need much of an introduction. I'm looking at getting authorisation for an urgent works notice, and as we've discussed previously, these sorts of notices only really remedy certain key issues. It's not a way of getting the building back into use. So things like repair of rainwater goods, that sort of thing. Obviously, you can see from the drawing, key location in Newport, city centre, it's a listed building. The issues that we've got, as you can see there, is that it's very difficult to get decent shots of the building because of the scale of it. You can see the rainwater goods are basically solid with vegetation. Now this is causing water ingress into the building. The elevations facing Stowe Hill and Commercial Street are not too bad, but the rear elevation is particularly poor. So this would be one of the requirements, is actually to remove that. Switching to the front elevation onto Commercial Street, contrary to what this slide states, this photograph I realised as I actually did a site visit with the owner last week. This is actually above one of the balcony areas to the left, and not actually above the entranceway. The porch of the entranceway has got basically dandelions, buddleia growing from it, again where the rainwater goods are solid. The big concern, as stated here, and I've seen it before with historic buildings, is if the buddleia is allowed to remain, it will displace masonry. It isn't an immediate concern. Building control have seen it, but from a structural point of view, yes, it is an issue. Additionally, there were some unauthorised works inside, and the main staircase has been cordoned off on the upper floors, and as you can see there, there's elements of the newel post there. It's a significant feature of the listed building. Pointed this out to the owner. Okay, apologies for that. The owner is aware of this, and so these were stored in one location, but the building was open to trespass. Hopefully that has been remedied now. Now, up in the this is within the rooms facing out onto Stowe Hill. As you can see there, there's a substantial roof collapse that's involved. Generally speaking, the ceilings are lath and plaster. Basically, the plaster's failed, quite significantly so in places. But this is probably one of the worst elements in the roof space. Now, this is the rear elevation, and you can see in places in the right-hand side of that picture, you can see the guttering is blocked up. You can see basically how the renders failed. Now, that's a significant issue because basically the walls were sopping on that rear elevation. But you can also see it'll be the left-hand side, there appears to be some hoarding, and if you go up from that faces into the central staircase area, and again, buddleia growing from it, rainwater goods blocked. So those are the things I'm looking to authorisation to get those cleared. This is a photograph of the main staircase. It was a dry day when I took the photograph. You can see the water ingress into this dogleg area here. Plaster's been taken off, obviously, as you can see, but the water is still running down that internal wall. big problem. Now, this is actually an old fire that's taken place, but somebody had apparently lit a fire literally in the middle of a floor. That's apparently a few years old, but the risk of fire to that building is quite significant. We did go with fire officers as well, so I was concerned if we secured the building that if somebody was inside there, that could be a problem. Go through, you can see there the vandalism on the walls with the graffiti. There was evidence of recent occupation of the property, in that there was post in there from somebody who was living in, I think it's fairly local. Police were aware of that. Sorry? Oh, I do apologise. The police basically were present, viewed the correspondence that was left there. There were concerns about it potentially being a cannabis factory farm. There's no evidence of that there, but a building of that size, it was a risk. In short, we're probably catching it on the cusp. The water ingress, particularly on that rear elevation, there was rot in places, and particularly with that central stairwell, which, as I say, is one of the features on the listed building description, and that is basically quick whistle-stop tour of the building as such. So we've secured the rear element of it, because basically individuals had forced entry through some fire doors at the back. That's been secured. Since my meeting last week with the owner of the property, we're potentially getting an application in shortly. They've been given a month to submit a schedule of works to the authority, and then they'll have 2 months from that date to undertake and complete works. What I'm looking for is authorisations. Should they fail to undertake any of those steps, that the authority will then serve an urgent works notice on them to require it. And then, say if they don't, we'll do at least some elements of the works in default and then recover the debt. I think I covered it all, but if anybody's got any questions, by all means, fire away.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mogford.
Thank you, Chair. So you are in discussion with the owners of this building. Have they indicated clearly that they're prepared to do the work?
They have. Basically, they've committed themselves to doing the work. Being an enforcement officer, I'm a bit cynical about these things, so this is why I would like to have backup of an urgent works notice or authorisation to serve it, should they renege on that.
Right, and then the second question is, do you have there's two factors here, the risk. Do you have an idea of how much it would cost the council to do the work, and do you have confidence that the money can actually be reclaimed from the owner?
We have a budget to undertake works. We may not be able to undertake all of the works. As long as those works are considered reasonable, as I said at the start of the presentation, basically an urgent works is to make the building weather-tight, trespass-proof, and secure it, and nothing more than that. Once we've done those works, and as I say, we would have to demonstrate they're reasonable, we can then pursue the owner in the court to recover the debt. Hopefully, the threat of the urgent works will be sufficient for the owner to get on board with doing the required works.
I suppose it's off topic a little bit, but are there any notional plans for that building, or has it just been allowed to go into wreck and ruin, as far as the owner's concerned?
The owner had looked like a pre-application presentation and discussed the potential for it to be a hotel, but potentially flats for the upper floors as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jordan.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Even though we know the Westgate is an historical building, is it a listed building as well? Yeah. You know, I think we had a big, massive, major sort of discussion on full council regarding this. You know, the last one as well. Would there be any enforcement quick enough to try and get the work done quicker than the date you stated?
I think it's one, it is listed, but secondary to that is we're looking at a reasonable time frame. You've seen the scale of it at the back in terms of getting scaffolding in, etc. We'd like to get it done sooner, obviously, but I think it is a balance. When we discussed it on site, say we had the conservation officer was present, and we were basically, to reiterate it was to get that schedule of works in. A month seemed reasonable, and then given the scale of it, to get the scaffolding in. It will be, because the scaffolding will facilitate the clearance of the guttering and the removal of the vegetation from the chimney stacks as well. Hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Sorry, Councillor Reynolds, is that old hand, or do you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies if I'm clarifying things that have already been said. I've been struggling to follow Neil's audio, unfortunately. I don't think it's your fault, Neil. I know you've moved the microphone, but it's still breaking up. But I don't think anybody in the meeting needs reminding about the importance of the Westgate. It's a Grade 2 listed building. We all know about its historical significance with the Chartists. Not just for Newport. I mean, it's a UK site of significance. The whole story of democracy is a massive, massive attraction for Newport. So I think we've got a duty to protect it in whatever way we can. Can I just clarify something that I think you said, Neil? I just want to make sure that I got it right. Did you say that there is a budget for the work that needs to be done, and with this enforcement order then we do have the legal recourse to reclaim that money? So in essence, it's not a risk as such to take on this work and to approve the enforcement notice. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, there is a budget, Councillor, not specifically for this building, but for a number of buildings within the city. There is the potential for funding from CADU, but we're probably at the tail end of that, so probably wouldn't get a chance to benefit from that on this particular occasion. The work's in default, yes, that's standard practice if they fail to do so, and we recover the debt in the county court.
Thanks.
Okay,
Councillor Reynolds, that is also stated in under the recommendations that the recovery of the associated debt which is generated.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I just want to clarify that. That's great, thanks.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Cox.
Just to be very brief, I echo the comments of Councillor Reynolds that this is an absolutely iconic building, and I just hope that, and it's been a tragedy just to see its deterioration. And the only point I wanted to make is that as a planning authority and with looking at issues such as placemaking, that we should have a massive concern about the future of this building. And I just really hope that having to take this action is a wake-up call, that we really do as an authority need to get engaged with the owners to establish some, long-term satisfactory solution to the issue that it's really become.
Okay, thank you. I think it's interesting this has come up so soon after the last council meeting where a big discussion was taking place, and the importance of this building is in everybody's eyes. It's important that we look after this building the best we can. So I'd just like a proposal for the recommendation to undertake the necessary action to draft and serve the urgent works notice under the Planning Act 1990. Additionally, if necessary, to undertake the required work in default and recover the associated debt generated. Do we have a proposal, please? Seconder? Thank you. All those in favour? Okay, that's passed unanimously. Okay, thank you all for attending. Let's please go and get warm and, and have a good rest of the day. Thank you.